Welcome back. In today's video, we're going to explore the world of the real-life Batman and their escapades. None of them are quite the same as the Batman as we know him, mainly due to how easy it would be for the world to discover them, but they can each resemble some traits of the Caped Crusader that we know and love. Without further ado, let's just jump right into our first Batman of our world. First stop is going to be in Chiba City, Japan, where the Dark Knight is spotted in broad daylight every so often. His first appearance came shortly after the earthquake and Fukushima power plant disaster, where he was seen riding around Japan on a custom three-wheeled motorcycle. While he is out and about, he will stop and take pictures with locals and has even done a few interviews. When asked why he goes around dressed in a batsuit, his reasoning was that due to the disaster, people had forgotten how to smile. There's not too much else to say about this Batman. Moving on, the next Batman on our list is a man by the name of Leonard Robinson. Leonard was famous for visiting hospitals dressed as Batman in order to cheer up sick children. In 2012, he even received national attention after dashcam footage of the police pulling over his custom Lamborghini Batmobile while he was making his way for a hospital visit went viral on the internet. According to the Washington Post, Mr. Robinson used more than $25,000 of his own money on Batman clothing, books, and toys each year for the children in his hospital visits. However, in August of 2015, our hero would be pronounced dead after another vehicle collided into his Batmobile and delivered a deadly blow whilst he was checking the engine. And he has been greatly missed by many ever since. Amongst the many people dressing up as Batman, there are some crafty folks. One who even built his own little Batcave. Built into his basement, the entrance is disguised as a grandfather clock with the hands frozen on the time of death of Bruce Wayne's parents, and requires a button hidden within the bust next to it to be pressed in order to enter. Inside, the cave is actually a home theater with a Dark Knight replica batsuit, as well as a matching grapple gun and batarang from the film. And while the suit and gadgets aren't quite practical, our next Batman is kitted out as close to the real thing as we can get. That brings us to Julian Checkman, a cosplayer with a background in movie props and creature effects who not only built his own batsuit, but holds the world record for most functioning gadgets on a cosplay at 23 gadgets. Originally, Julian only planned creating the suit and then decided that the suit was incomplete without the gadgets, and took most of his inspiration for both the suit and gadgets from the Batman Arkham games. Just like the Batcave, the suit and gadgets weren't entirely practical themselves. While Julian Checkley's suit is outfitted with gadgets, it isn't able to withstand many of the threats that a real-life Batman would face. As such, 21-year-old Jackson Gordon, an industrial design student from Philadelphia University, created his own Batsuit. And instead of just making it another cosplay, he made it specifically stab and impact resistant through the use of Kevlar. His reasoning? Well, he had previously made a version of the Batsuit from the Dark Knight trilogy, and was frustrated that it lacked the functionality or authenticity of the suit in the movie. Jackson has even uploaded a video demonstrating the stab-proof and impact-resistant capabilities, as well as the improved mobility of the suit. Although, despite all of this, he never decided to start fighting clowns and being a vigilante. An important note is that most of our Batmen are at least grounded in reality to some extent. The biggest exception to this comes from a man that was included on an episode of Dr. Phil. The man's fiance brought him onto the show because the man legit believed that he was a superhero. He even goes so far as to say that
real name is Giovanni.
That is not the name that defines me. My name is Goose Wayne.
That his real name is Goose Wayne. He has an assortment of clothing to look like Batman, even wearing black makeup around his eyes whenever not wearing the mask, and has taken part in numerous fights. Fights that included driving over 2 hours just to fight another person dressed as the Joker. And despite the frequent fighting, he hasn't won a single one. So even though most would associate Batman with being an expert martial artist, the Brampton Batman seemingly forgoes combat experience, instead opting to be a more neighborhood-friendly Dark Knight. Originating in 2014, Canada gained its own Batman who would patrol the streets nearly every night in full Batsuit attire and even with his own Batmobile. After some time, the Batman came forward with his identity, and it turned out to be a man by the name of Stephen Lawrence. Mr. Lawrence typically spends his days at his 2 to 10 job, then patrols the streets at night as Batman, where he enjoys helping others with good deeds, changing flat tires, and even saving someone with CPR. When he originally purchased the Batmobile, he went to the police to explain that his intentions were not to be a vigilante, but to help others and to bring joy doing it. The police in Brampton have maintained a healthy relationship with Mr. Lawrence, and even occasionally pulling him over for pictures. And I believe he is still around, as his Facebook page at Brampton Batman receives occasional updates. However, unlike Mr. Lawrence, our Patoski Batman has never been on good terms with the police. Mark Williams, a man located in Patoski Midge, would patrol the streets every night dressed in full mask, cape, and utility belt as, Batman. A surprise, I'm sure. Although he's more famous for how often he was arrested by the police. In fact, during one of his arrests, he was found with self-defense spray, a baton-style weapon, and other items that the police said were a no-no. This particular arrest put him on probation for 6 months. 6 long months, where he had to hang up his batsuit and put his vigilantism to a halt. While Mr. Lawrence would have run-ins with the police quite often, a Batman located in London would have quite the opposite experience in his vigilante activities. In June of 2015, reports of a man in a batsuit who stopped multiple crimes in London's Bromley town centre, the town of Penge, and the town of Lewisham, would-be mugging victims described the man successfully stopping the crimes, and even having a deep voice as well as being versed in martial arts skills. And although there were a number of eyewitness reports, Bromley police have claimed that they haven't received any reports of such a vigilante. So it's kinda up in the air on whether he actually exists, as I've only found very little information regarding him. Now, surely of all of these real-life Batmen, there has to be one that is close to being the true Batman as possible. Well, to an extent. One of the most well-known obscure vigilantes, ignore the oxymoron, I'm aware of it, it's likely to be Phoenix Jones, whose real name is Benjamin Fodor. While he never dressed as the Batman, he has mentioned several times that he was heavily inspired by Batman and his philosophies. Originally, Benjamin was an up-and-coming MMA fighter who showed promise and was expected to make it in the UFC. However, one night while walking with his son back to their car, Benjamin noticed his car window was broken, and his son had cut himself on the glass that was lying on the ground. Benjamin felt there was no way that he could tell his son that everything would be alright if he didn't do something himself to make things alright. This was only the first incident that pushed Benjamin towards becoming a vigilante, as not long after, a friend of his was left with permanent facial damage following an assault outside of a bar. At this point, Benjamin would then decide to abandon his career in MMA and the prospects of fighting in the UFC in order to become the vigilante known as Phoenix Jones. Phoenix Jones would patrol the streets of Seattle at night while wearing his black and gold costume, outfitted with bulletproof armor plating. Ever since 2011, Phoenix has intervened in multiple crimes and became part of a real-life superhero project known as the Rain City Superhero Movement Group, and as such has received mixed feelings from the police regarding his actions as well as those of his group. The police's main concern is that if any of the actions of the group went south, then they will have to deal with the situation anyway, and now with additional victims. In 2014, the group would disband, despite spending most nights dealing with drunks, providing good deeds, and handing out Taco Bell to homeless people that they came across. In March of 2019, Phoenix would announce that he is retiring from vigilantism as he didn't believe that his actions were making an impact. And then, in January of 2020, it was discovered that Seattle's vigilante had in fact turned to a life of crime. Phoenix Jones was arrested as part of an undercover drug bust in which he was selling Molly and cocaine. Despite Benjamin Ford going from vigilante to criminal, he still managed to inspire hope through his actions. Overall, we may never have a Batman like the ones from the comics or the movies, but at least we can get some interesting story out of those who try. Speaking of, don't try to be Batman. Or do. I'm not your father. And that's it. That is most of the Batman in our world. So go ahead, take your Batman and run. Seriously, take the information and go home. That's it. That's the video.